I want to welcome everyone to this new series, Message in a Bottle. Here we go. I've got today's Message in a Bottle, raring to go. My name's Dave, and it's an absolute privilege to be up here today. I thought I'd start off by sharing a little bit about myself. So I didn't actually grow up in Hereford. I'm originally from a small town called Formby near Liverpool. And growing up, I was like this adventure kid. I used to love playing manhunt. There was some local woods. Used to go and make dens down there. But also I loved like action and adventure stories. I'd read like the Famous Five or Narnia, the Lord of the Rings, the Hobbit. But also I loved movies as well. Jurassic Park, Indiana Jones, the Star Wars trilogy, the original. Not the new ones. And just all these movies inspired something within me. I used to dream about, wow, what would it be like to be like Luke Skywalker fighting Darth Vader? And you'd have like stick fights with friends. And there was just like this dreaming and this fantasy. But then as I grew older, I got to like my early teens and I started to think about what did I actually want to do with my life? I loved adventure. I loved the excitement of it. Well, what sort of careers were there out there? What sort of life could I have? And then I saw this movie. Could it get a clip on?
Heading into twilight, spreading out a wing starlight. Got you jumping off the deck, shoving into overdrive. Far away.
It's reveals up to you. If you didn't know what film that was from, that is from the film Top Gun. And I felt the need for speed. And I watched this movie and I was like, wow, that is awesome. Imagine being like Maverick flying low level in this multi-million-pound fighter jet, like the afterburners on the go, shooting down bad guys. I'm like, this is an actual job. And then I heard about, down the road, I heard there was this kid, I was about 12, 13 years old at this point. I don't know why I was in Top Gun at that age, but anyway. I heard about this thing called air cadets. The kid went down the road, used to go, and he used to get flying lessons. And I was like, what? So I could go to a club where I get flying lessons and I get to learn what it's like to be a pilot, and I get to be in like this RAF type environment. And so I went along to cadets and I used to love it. I was like the keenest teenager out there. And like I was just like so excited about everything, going in helicopters or marching around the square and standing on the street and collecting for the British Legion in the rain. Like all of it was part of it, and all of it just felt like it was going somewhere. It felt like this isn't just like some club. It feels like it's a stepping stone to some of the dreams and some of the things I was imagining. And I started to imagine what my life could look like. And, perhaps you were the same when you were a child. You had these dreams, you had these ideas of what the future could look like. You thought about maybe, what job would you do? Where might you end up? Who might you end up with? Who you're going to marry, where are you going to live, where you're going to have this career, what sort of dreams and adventures were you going to live out in the future? And quite often what can happen is we get a bit older and reality sets in and we start to, lose sight of some of those old dreams, and actually some of them were fantasy and maybe weren't actually what you were called to. But for some people in the room and for some of us, there's dreams and things that we're believing for and holding on to that maybe we haven't seen yet. They're still to come to fruition. We're still waiting for. So that childlike faith, that excitement, you can imagine was what this character who we're going to be looking at in the Bible today was experiencing at the time. So we're going to go 3,000 years ago into Israel, the kingdom of Israel, and we are heading into the book of 1 Samuel. And so just to give you a little bit of context, the current king at the moment, his name's Saul, and he is he's not the best king. He's had lots of opportunities to get it right, but he's made mistakes, he's disobeyed, he's got it wrong, and he's done things in his own strength, he's done things in his own ability. And so it came to the point where God's like, do you know what, I regret that I've made Saul king. I need to select someone else, someone who's different, someone who is going to serve me, and someone who's going to be a good king. And so we find 1 Samuel 16, 10 to 13, we find this prophet Samuel. He's gone to this town of Bethlehem, and he's gone to this man called Jesse, who is presenting his sons. So here we go, 1 Samuel 16, 10 to 13. Jesse, he's got 7 sons, and they pass before Samuel. But Samuel said to him, the Lord has not chosen these. And so he asked Jesse, are these all the sons that you have? There is still the youngest, Jesse answers. He is out tending the sheep. Samuel said, send for him. We will not sit down until he arrives. So he sent for him and brought him in. He was glowing with health and had a fine appearance and handsome features. And then the Lord said, rise and anoint him. This is the one. So Samuel took the horn of oil and anointed him in the presence of his brothers. And from that day on, the Spirit of the Lord came powerfully upon David. And Samuel went to Ramah. So David, this young shepherd boy, he wasn't even originally in the lineup. He's called out for this most significant purpose. He's called out for the most significant task in the land. And it doesn't stop there. Not long after this, he finds himself in the palace. He's invited into the palace where the king is to play for the king, because the king, he's being tormented, and actually David's music starts to soothe the king. But the thing for David is he's now in the palace. He's in this environment that he's going to lead from in the future, where he's going to reign from in the future. And so although he's not in a leadership position, he's in a space where he's starting to see the ins and outs of how things operate, how things work. And then chapter 17 is the story David is most famous for. David fights this giant called Goliath. This 3-meter giant. You can imagine this teenage boy, and he stands in front of the Philistine army, in the front of this giant, and he slings a stone at this giant's head, kills him, and inspires a nation to go and fight against the Philistines. And so there's these like victories that David's having, like really, he's starting to become famous. And then David goes on to win more battles, and he starts to lead some of Saul's armies, and he's winning battle after battle, and everywhere he goes, he's having success. And the people love him. There's favor upon him. People start singing this song. They're like, Saul, he's killed his thousands, but David's killed his tens of thousands. And you can imagine the dreams and the ideas that David's got at the moment. It's like, wow, this is actually happening. I'm going to get to be the king. I can see the potential of what's coming. I'm beginning to dream. I'm beginning to see things fall into place. This is often how it can start out when we are dreaming, particularly when we're dreaming with God. And I didn't go on to become a fighter pilot, unfortunately, but it did kind of pave my way a little bit to the career path that I took. But the thing was, I was following my dreams, not God dreams. And so although I got to see some amazing places, I got to do some amazing things, and God certainly used some of the journey of where I've been, the reality is because I was away from God so much, I started to fall away from church. And although I professed that I was a Christian to people, I didn't live like it. And the next thing, I'm seeing people dying on the battlefield, and I'm involved in all these different kind of experiences that I voluntarily put myself in, really. And yeah, it was painful. And the way I dealt with it was binge drinking. There'd be times I'd be drinking till I black out. And then I'd get into volatile relationship with someone. And that was just like the worst thing to be in. And basically following my dreams actually didn't get me to where I thought it would be ultimately. Yes, in the short term, I got to do some exciting things, but actually at what cost? And then after my teenage years and dreaming with that career and heading in that direction, I'd spent probably the best part, all my 20s kind of doing my own thing. And as my early 30s, I came in here, 2018 it was, January, and I sat at the back of the room over there, and Pastor G preached. I can't remember exactly what it was about, but I felt like I'd come home, and I had this encounter with Jesus that changed my life. It was the beginning of something fresh, and I was like, okay, I'm going to keep coming to church. I'm going to keep coming back, until I came to our annual gathering that year, the Cave, and I had a really dramatic encounter with the Lord that changed everything. I came out of the cave hungry to find out what was going on. I was reading the Bible. I wanted to know what was happening to me, and my language changed, my thinking changed, everything within me started to transform. And I began to dream again. There was this like childlike wonder about the awesomeness of God and how great he was, and the amazing things he was going to lead me on to. I believed that he had someone for me who was going to be a God-fearing woman. I believed that he had like an adventure ahead for me. I believed I was going to go church planting, and there was going to be all kinds of amazing things I was going to get to be a part of. And I began to have these new dreams of adventure. And there's so many stories in this room where people have had those kind of moments for themselves. There's been those calling moments. There's been the prophetic promises that are hanging over people. There's dreams you're believing for. There's things that God has said are going to happen, and you're believing are going to happen in Jesus' name. Dreams of salvation, dreams of adventure, dreams of miracles and provision and pregnancies and all these different things that people are holding on to. New church plants, new ministries. But what happens when things don't work out as you expected, or they don't look as you expected? Returning to David's journey, King Saul's opinion of David is switching. He's not really a big fan of the songs that people are thinking about David, and there's this jealousy that's brewing within him. He's getting more and more jealous, and here we go, 1 Samuel 19. David's been fighting many battles, and once again, he's out again, fighting another battle, and once more, war broke out. David went out and fought the Philistines. He struck them with such force that they fled before him. So again, another victory. God's with David. And then what's going on in Saul? It says, an evil spirit from the Lord came on Saul as he was sitting in his house with his spear in his hands. And while David was playing the lyre, Saul tried to pin him to the wall with the spear. But David eluded him as Saul drove the spear into the wall. And that night, David made good his escape. So in this sudden turn of events, David's gone from the palace to running for his life. Yeah, he's gone from this space where he's in the palace and he's learning all these things and it looks like he's heading in a certain direction. And then he's been forced to flee for his life. And Saul, not only is Saul coming after David, he's killing people in the wake of it. And you can imagine what David must be thinking. And often it can be like this, maybe not as extreme as this, but we can experience some of this for ourselves in our faith journeys. You know, it can start out with all the promise, all the dreams, all the hopes of things to come. But as we mature in our faith, that initial excitement can be met with challenges and trials, or even just long periods of monotony where you're like, okay, I thought something would have happened by now. It seems pretty stagnant. I feel like I'm just in the routine of things. And waiting for the calling, waiting for the breakthrough can become difficult. And you start to ask questions. You know, I've seen so many people come into church and they're on fire for Jesus. They have this encounter with God. They get baptized, and then trials come, challenges come, or it becomes routine, and the fire starts to go out. The fire starts to dwindle, or people are just impatient and they start to try and take matters into their own hands. They start to try and figure things out for themselves. Question I've got for you is, how do you respond when waiting on God looks different to how you expect? You know, you can imagine David's thinking at this point, but I'm supposed to be the future king. I'm this leader who has all these victories. You know, I'm this good-looking bloke. I've got everything going for me. There's favor upon me. God's with me. I thought this was going to be different, and now I'm hiding in caves. I'm hiding for my life. I'm in this darkness rather than in the palace. What is happening? I thought it would be different. I didn't think it would look like this. But the reality is, David hadn't messed up. He hadn't missed it. He hadn't made a mistake. He was exactly where he was supposed to be. And today I want to say to you, perhaps you are too. You know, in a culture that's becoming less familiar with the ability to wait, we've got phones where I could literally get on my phone right now and wake someone up in Australia and talk with them face to face. We don't need to wait for a letter to appear somewhere. We can just instantly text someone. We don't have to wait for parcels to turn up. We can go on Amazon Prime and it'll turn up tomorrow. We don't want to sit in traffic. No one wants to sit in traffic in Hereford. They want to get to where they want to go. And we start to complain about the fact that, oh, I can't travel at 30 miles an hour rather than walking. People don't want to wait for the right person. They want to meet the person now. They don't want to wait. They have to be with someone. It's like, no, but I want that now. I need that now. People don't want to wait until they're married before they sleep together or before they live together. They don't want to wait for the promotion. They don't want to do the hard grafts in the lower levels before they're able to be elevated in the way that they should be. They want to be, oh, but I've done a degree, so I should be promoted. I should be in this role. I should be in this position. No one wants to wait. And you know, there's lots of relatable examples I can imagine in the room that I've certainly felt all of these things at some point or other, pretty much. You know, I thought I'd be married by now. I thought I would have met her. Why am I not getting noticed by leaders? You know, can't they see the potential? Can't they see the gifting within me? You know, I feel called to nations. Why am I still in Hereford? And other people may be thinking, why haven't I been healed yet? I thought things were going to be different. Why is this happening to me? I think these are very human responses to waiting. We're all human. We all get it wrong. We're not God. We don't understand the bigger picture. We don't understand what's happening. And we ask these questions, what, when, how, and we want it now. But when things don't go to plan, and we're not seeing what we expected, do we have the patience to wait on God? Or is our response to try and figure out, or to make our own decisions and to take things into our own hands? Or is it to give up? Yeah, to begin with, I think it might be helpful to talk about why you might be experiencing delay, why there might be a waiting period with God. And so there's three reasons I've got here. Not necessarily because you're not praying enough or because you're not fasting. God doesn't expect us to be doing 3 40-day fasts in a row. Anyway, fasting isn't about twisting God's arm and hunger strike. It's about actually praying and seeking God's will. And quite often, when it comes to praying, you've got the answer, but it's not time yet. It's not time. So, first point I've got for you guys, or first consideration, is this actually something God wants for my life? Is this fantasy or is this faith? When we come to know God, He does a work in us. And so often, a lot of the desires, a lot of the things that we used to want should begin to fall away. As we're transformed by the renewing of our minds, as we spend time in scriptures, as we spend time in church, things will start to shift. And so naturally, some of those things will begin to fall away. Some of our immature dreams, some of our immature ideas. But also, there may be some things that you're believing for, hoping for, that actually God is in the process of redirecting your desires. He's redirecting your thinking around some of those things because His plan is potentially a little bit different. And what He wants to do is far greater than what you're thinking about and what you're believing for. Okay, second one. God is preparing the way for you. So there's often factors outside of your situation when it comes to waiting on God. There's often more things going on than just you and your lane and what's happening. But God's preparing the way. There's people He's preparing. There's environments and ground He's preparing. There's maybe even technology and things like that aren't even in place yet that are going to be in place when you get to where God is calling you to. And we need to get out of this mindset of thinking just within the here and now of like, what about next week? What about next week? But thinking with God's perspective that He's thinking far greater timelines than we're thinking. So be aware that God is potentially preparing the way for you, and that's why you may not have seen the breakthrough. But finally, the final one I want to talk about is the fact that God is developing you. So if you're waiting on God, there's a development process that's taking place at the moment. There's nothing passive about what's happening, even though it may feel passive, it may feel like not a lot's going on. And so the illustration I've got for you guys is, let's rewind about 30, 40 years. Today we've got cameras on our phones, and we've got cameras here that I'm looking at and I'm seeing in the room. But the great thing about these cameras are you're able to see the imagery within this camera as you take a photo. So I can literally go and I can check it and go, oh, the ISO is a bit grainy. Oh, the aperture, okay, have a play about with that. But in the past, 30, 40 years ago, that wasn't an option. You took your photo, you had this thing called film in there, and there'd be like 24, 26 images in there that you could take. And most of my images would have a big thumbprint across the front of it, and they'd be blurry. But that's what you got, and you weren't able to check it. What happened is you take the photos, and then you take it to a developer, and the developer would take it through this dark room process, and they put it into this like projector thing, and you'd have this exposure on a bit of photographic paper, and then they put it through this bath solution. But the thing with the dark room is it had to remain dark, because if you had light coming in prematurely, it would damage the photo. The photo would be ruined. And so it had to remain in darkness, in obscurity, hidden away, in order to go through that process, because to be brought out early, to be rushed, would have ruined the photo. It wouldn't have been workable. Now, if God is preparing you in a place of obscurity at the moment, take courage. Enjoy the process and go with it, because it can't be rushed. Make the most of it. David didn't just hide away when he was in the cave, but actually he was still leading people. He was still making the most of every opportunity he had. He was still winning battles. He was still raising up these men to walk faithfully with God and to follow Him. And so make the most of what opportunities you've got at the moment. Perhaps you've just finished academy and you're like, okay, what's going on next? I know some of you have got some opportunities coming up, but some of you may not. And it's like, all right, who can I get under? Who can I get around? How can I serve? How can I get involved in church? How can I get involved in my place of work? Actually, if you're looking for the next step in work or the next step in an aspect of your life, then looking for the opportunities around you in the dark room rather than looking ahead is going to be really beneficial with regards to preparation for the next step that God's got you through, the next stage of the development process. But development in the dark room is going to protect you from failure on the platform. God's more interested in developing our character than He is our gifting. With regards to your character preparation, it's all part of that sanctification, that process of becoming more like Jesus. And that's the whole Christian walk is all about becoming more like Jesus, starting to look more like Him. But it's that transformation that He's taking through at the moment that's going to prepare you for the weight of what He's got for you in the days ahead. David had killed the giant. He'd won the battles. He had the favor. He was best friends with the king's son. He had everything going for him. But there was this danger that there could have been an arrogance. There could have been a semblance of, oh, look what I did. And this entitlement could have risen up within him. He was only a young guy. He was maybe 20 years old when he was on the battlefield. And you can imagine this pride. It's common to us all, coming up, rising up. And the thing is, this is exactly the same reason why Saul lost the crown. Because his character couldn't carry it. He was prideful, he was controlling, he was insecure. And God wanted to save David from that by taking him through a dark room process. So what opportunities have you got in this waiting period? It's in the waiting where deep faith is formed, where you can go deep in your relationship with God, where you can go deep into some character stuff, and it can be uncomfortable. But it's in this time where you're able to become more like the person God needs you to be for the things ahead. God doesn't want fast food faith. He doesn't want hype. He doesn't want just like shallowness. He wants something deeper. He wants something substantial. He wants something that's going to be able to carry the fullness of all he's got. So go with the process. Enjoy it. Get stuck in. Okay, 1 Samuel 24, 2-5. So we're going to fast forward a little bit of time. David's now been in hiding and on the run for a while now. He's been hiding in caves. He's been hiding in different places, foreign lands. And here he is in En Gedi, this like oasis. There's like waterfalls and caves and things like that there. But Saul's found out where he is. And so 1 Samuel 24. So Saul took 3,000 able young men from all Israel and set out to look for David and his men near the crags of the wild goats. He came to the sheep pens along the way. A cave was there, and Saul went in to relieve himself. So David and his men, they're far back in the cave. And then David's men said to him, "This is the day the Lord spoke of when he said to you, I will give your enemy into your hands for you to deal with as you wish." Then David crept up unnoticed and cut off a corner of Saul's robe. Afterwards, David was conscience-stricken because for having cut off a corner of his robe. Okay, so David's been presented with what looks like a really great opportunity. It's like the king's here, and he's got these voices around him saying, "This is it. You've been waiting for a while now, and there's the king. Why don't you go for it? Why don't you go and take what's yours? Take what you've been waiting for, what you've been wanting." Saul, he's totally unaware of the danger. He's just relieving himself in the corner. Thing is, there's always going to be alternatives when it comes to waiting on God. You may even be experiencing a choice between an alternative right now that looks appealing, that looks like, oh yeah, I want that adventure, I want the calling, but there's this option here that, okay, it's not necessarily exactly what I thought it would be, but it looks pretty good, and you reason with yourself. The thing is, God is not preparing you for almost. He's not preparing you so you can take a shortcut or so you can settle. Because almost isn't the fullness of what God has. He's not. He's a good father. It says in Matthew 7, you've got a good father. He's not going to give you a stone when you're waiting for bread. He's going to give you what you're believing for, what he said he's going to give you, what is spoken over you. So don't settle for anything other than what he's got for you. Along my waiting journey, there's been all kinds of different opportunities I've had. And what's really interesting is always before like a ministry moment. I've helped with some of our academy courses, and a couple of years in a row we've run this thing called the Freedom Course, and really powerful courses where people, God really moves and healing comes. It's been interesting both times. A couple of weeks beforehand, I've had a message from someone like, "Hey, got this job opportunity coming up. Do you want to come? This week I'll pay for you to come in and sit in the classroom, and you can sit in the back room, and then you can take on this job, and it's good money, good travel. It sounds really great." And initially, the human side of me is like, "Yeah, that sounds good." So I've been a student for the past few years, and I could do with a bit of money, yeah. And this looks like a great opportunity, but the reality is that would have taken me away from something that God was doing, something that God wanted to do. And ultimately, I feel called to serve God. I feel called to follow Him, and I'm called to ministry, and that's what I'm supposed to be saying yes to, not these other opportunities. But the thing is, God's got a plan for your life, but so is the enemy. And so often, before breakthroughs coming, before something's about to happen, there'll be an alternative. And there'll be doubt that's formed. It's like, did God really say this? Or actually, could I go and do this option? Could I go and earn that money? And you reason with yourself, and you were all human. I'm going to miss some days with this new job, but There's a new group of people. Maybe I'll evangelize and I'll reach those people, and I'll make a difference. I'll take the kingdom to them. Well, I won't be around community anymore, but I'm going to go and set the world on fire for myself. Or maybe, there's that girl there. She's really good looking. She's okay. She's not that interested in church. She said she used to come to church. She used to have a faith, but I've been waiting so long. Maybe this is the one, and I'll just something. With maybe God will do something, and I'll pray for her. And maybe she'll get saved, and maybe she'll come to church. It's something we all do because the thing waiting isn't easy. It's difficult. It's challenging. It's particularly when there's things you really like. Heart's desire, the things you've been waiting for. But this is the place where confusion can set in. And there's different voices that can be coming in. Obviously, David had the voices of his own men around him, but we might have the voice of comparison. Going on social media is a nightmare because you see people and they're like, look where they're at. They're married, they've got the kids, they've got the job, they've got everything going for them. They're good looking, they're going, in the gym all the time, they've got everything together. And where am I at? I'm 39, why aren't I married yet? I'm like, what's going on? What's happening? Why haven't I got the job? Why haven't I got the career? And you start to ask these questions and start thinking about comparing yourself to other people. Even within church, there's people you look at and you're like, oh, that family seem like they've got it together. But what about me, God? What about me? And an opportunity comes and you're like, do you know what? I'm going to make it happen for myself. But God's got each of us on different development stages. We're in different lanes. Imagine like an oven, and you put different parts of a roast dinner in the oven. It's going to take longer for the turkey to cook because the main event than maybe boiling some potatoes or boiling some vegetables. So rather than trying to compare yourself to other people, stay in your lane and trust that God is doing something in you that's significant and is personal for your preparation for what God's got for you. Because what God's got for people in this room, the things that some people are called to in this room are very different to other people's. The specific callings, significant callings that are not the same as everyone else. So don't look at other people. Avoid the voice of comparison. What about the voice of family and friends who mean well and they can see, you've been waiting for something for so long, but they are not God. They can't see the fullness of what God's got for you. And in your spirit, you're like, okay, they're off. They say, go for it. And you're like, there's something off. And I found that there's times where I've been encouraged to go and do things. And it's actually when I prayed about it and I've submitted it to leaders that I felt, no, I can't put my finger on it, but this isn't it. And I decided to go with the God option rather than my ideas of what's been presented before me. But also a voice that can be so loud as your own voice. I want to change the world. I want to be married. I want to be with that person. I want to step into the breakthrough. I want to see the calling. I want to see the purpose. But it's in this place that can lead us into trouble. So don't skip the dark room process. But there's one more voice that I want to talk about. And we're going to go back into the David story just for one more time to kind of illustrate the point. So David's been on the run potentially for up to 10 years at this point. He's maybe 30 years old now. Thinking back to when he was a shepherd boy being called, maybe 15 years have passed and he's still not stepped into the calling. There's been this waiting, there's been this preparation. It's not been passive. He's been on the run. He's been hiding. He's been in caves. He's been in hardship. He's been in foreign lands. But we find him at this point, 1 Samuel 30. He's been rejected by Saul. He'd been rejected by some of the nations that he was hiding in, different armies that he was like coming alongside. He's been rejected by them. And he's now back at Ziklag where his family and possessions are. And this is the scene he finds when he gets back. So 1 Samuel 30, verse 3 to 6. When David and his men reached Ziklag, they found it destroyed by fire, and their wives and sons and daughters had been taken captive. So David and his men wept aloud until he had no strength left to weep. David's 2 wives had been captured. I'm not going to try and pronounce those. And David was greatly distressed because the men were talking of stoning him. Each one was bitter in spirit because of his sons and daughters. So David's found himself in this place where he's been rejected by everyone and everything. Everything's been stripped away. All of the victories, all of the fame, all of the favor, it's gone. There's nothing left. It's been taken. How do we respond when everything's gone? When everything's stripped back and there's nothing else? What do we rely on? What do we put our hope in? Well, David's response continues at the end of verse 6. It says, but David found strength You know, we all have things that we want to see. People want to see family members saved. We want to see the dreams. We want to see their breakthrough. We want to see the purpose and the calling. We want to see the fullness of the potential that God's put within us. We want to step into it. We want the dreams. We want what God's got for us. But, you know, we want so much, but there's only one thing we truly need. And this is something David learned along the way. He knew his need for the Lord. So, it says David strengthened himself in the Lord. How did he do that? When everything's gone, when he's led to the edge of despair, when there's nothing left, he gets on his knees. When darkness has closed in around him, and he declares, "The Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear? The Lord is the stronghold of my life. Of whom shall I be afraid? When the wicked advance against me to devour me, it is my enemies and my foes who will stumble and fall. Though an army besiege me, my heart will not fear. Break out against me, even then I will be confident. Because there's one thing I ask from the Lord. This only do I seek, that I may dwell in the house of the Lord all the days of my life, to gaze on the beauty of the Lord and to seek him in his temple. For in the day of trouble, he will keep me safe in his dwelling. He will hide me in the shelter of his sacred tent. He will set me high upon a rock." There's one thing we need from the Lord. There's one thing David needed from the Lord. There's one thing you need from the Lord as you're waiting upon him. As you're wanting things, as you're desiring things, let our heart's desire be him and him alone first. Because it's in this space where we get on our knees and we say, "I need you, God," where we see who God really is. We remember that he is the creator of the heavens and the earth, that he's the God of angel armies, that he has all power and all authority, that he's the God who heals and restores. He's the God who can resurrect the dead, who parts the waters, who can do all things. And we come to this place where we've stopped looking at the problems and the things that aren't happening. We start looking at the one who's got the plan, the one who can do everything. David couldn't see the way, but he knew how to pray. He knew how to worship. He knew how to get on his face and say, "God's not in my strength. I don't know the way. I can't see the way. I don't know what's going on. I'm hopeless. I'm lost. But God, you're with me. And I know that you're faithful. I know that you're for me. I know that what you've spoken is true." You know, in this room, there's testimony after testimony of life change for Jesus. There's testimony after testimony of people who've waited and have seen breakthrough. Miracle pregnancies, miracle healings, people who've gone church planting, people who've built amazing things in the name of Jesus. They've gone and done incredible things for God. You know, I said before, I'm 39 years old, and I've wanted to be with someone for so long, and it's been hard. The waiting's been difficult. But, you know, next month I get to marry the most amazing woman. I know she'll love this. And, you know, the plans are coming together for the wedding eventually. We're like, it's starting to fall into place. But like I say, it's been a journey. It hasn't been like the Disney story. It's been hardship and difficulty. There's been times I've literally gone for runs and I've stood in the field and been like, "God, where are you? What's happening? Is there something wrong with me?" And I've gone on this journey similar to how David would have gone on as well. If you read through the Psalms, half of the Psalms are written by David, and you can see the emotional turmoil and the journey he went on. But he always comes back to, "But God, you're faithful. But God, you are my sword and my shield. You're my rock. You're my deliverer. You're my fortress." You know, the brief in this series we were given was, what is the one message that you have for the church? Here we go. I've got my message in a bottle. If anyone knows that song. And the message I've got for you today: wait. Wait on the Lord. You know, David had no idea how much longer he had to go. He'd just come to this place where everything's fallen apart and he's got nothing left. But he had the Lord. And in that space, he had everything he needed in the Lord. Will you wait when everything seems lost? When you can't see anything happening? When it seems like it's just the same routine, monotony? Will you wait? Will you wait upon the Lord, or will you try and figure it out for yourself? Because when it feels like nothing's happening, God is up to something. Something is stirring upstream, church. Something is stirring upstream. He's not forgotten you. You've not missed it. Something is happening. God is on the move. And you know, David's story, it didn't finish at this point. Now, David didn't know how many more chapters of the book were to go. He didn't know how many more pages had to be turned. He didn't know how many more challenges and trials before he was going to see the breakthrough. But God did. God knew. God was the one writing David's story. God was the one who'd orchestrated it, who'd authored it, who'd allowed certain things to happen, had allowed for the trials and challenges. And the amazing thing is, David went on from this moment of brokenness, where all the men had broken. He stood up in the strength that he had and with the authority of God with him. And he went and led those men to go and recapture and retrieve everything that was taken. All the wives, all the family, all the possessions are all brought back. And then we don't see David in the rest of 1 Samuel. Because the next time we see David, it's the end of the book. It's the start of a new book. Saul's dead and David's becoming king. God is faithful. He is a faithful God. He will do what he said he would do. He's the God of the impossible. It may seem impossible. It may seem like nothing's happening. It may look like it's the same routine. It looks like you've gone through another trial and you thought it was going to work out and it didn't work out. But God is faithful. He's faithful to do what he said he would do. He's the God of the impossible. He's the God who can walk on water. He's the God who parts the water. He's the God who can do immeasurably more than you could possibly ask or imagine. You know, with Rosie, I've not just got someone I'm going to do life with. I've not just got an amazing partner. I've got someone who, for many years, we've led different groups together. And I believe we're going to go and do ministry together. And we're going to do some great things for God. And I'm so grateful that I had to go on the journey I've gone on, even though it's been hard and it's been difficult. God's given me someone who's immeasurably more than I could ask or imagine. And I believe that the promise God has for you is far greater, far grander than you could possibly imagine. There's so many more layers to it, so many more dimensions to what God's got for you, to trust the process.